Story continues to build on the rich world of John Denver and Blue Star, weaving in themes of evolution, conflict, and the emergence of intelligent life. Guiding the new civilization from Stone Age to super-advanced civilization and fights battles along the way. Now the story begins. Did you read the news? Just now, the goddess of Boo successfully awakened our planet, reaching a diameter of 33 kilometers, setting a new historical record for our river city. Fuck, is that true? This strong? As expected of the #1 genius of our river city. TSK, with a diameter of more than 30 kilometers, converting this into high-grade energy should be easy. It's not just that. It's even possible to convert it into spirit energy. Spirit energy? That's a planet of cultivation. Let alone a planet of cultivation, I would be satisfied if I could create a planet of martial artists. 7 middle schools of River City. Outside the awakening room, a group of young students was discussing in whispers. Today was the day of awakening. From time to time, all sorts of shocking news would come. Everyone's expressions were different. Some were excited, some were envious, some were nervous, some had a calm expression. Outside the crowd, John Denver looked at everything calmly. He had transmigrated here for more than half a year. He was already used to this strange world. Here, as long as he reached the age of 18, he would have the chance to awaken a planet and transform it into origin energy. Furthermore, he could create various transcendent civilizations on the planet. Someone had converted their origin energy to create a card civilization. Everyone on the planet was a card user. There were people who had transformed their origin energy into a soul civilization. Everyone on the planet was a soul cultivator. Someone had converted origin energy to create a cultivation civilization. Everyone on the planet was a cultivator. Awakened successfully. At best, he could have a territory that belonged to him. He would become a master. If the awakening failed, he could only be a commoner for the rest of his life. Probably working for another planet lord. There would be no chance to climb up. It could be said to be able to step into heaven, one must risk taking a step into hell. For everyone, this was the most important day. Huala. The door to the awakening chamber opened. The first batch of awakened students walked out. Their expressions were different. The face that had successfully awakened was filled with excitement and joy. Those who failed were dejected. A few girls even cried. Second batch of awakening students, prepare to enter. The teacher at the door glanced at the people queuing behind him and shouted. The students outside began to stand up straight. John Denver was also in the second batch. Following the stream of people, they entered the awakening room. In the awakening room, everyone settled down. More or less, they were nervous. In front of everyone, there was a transparent round crystal ball. This is a crystal ball specially used for awakening. It contains a portion of origin energy. The teacher in charge of awakening said, later on, put your hands on the crystal ball. Once you awaken, the origin energy will flow into your bodies bit by bit. During this time, you will be able to awaken a planet. But if the source energy is used up and the planet is yet to awaken, then the awakening will end. The awakening will be declared a failure. Next, please prepare yourselves. The awakening teacher glanced at everyone. Everyone put their hands on the crystal ball in front of them. John Denver was no exception. He took a deep breath. His right hand slowly moved forward. He gently touched the crystal ball. John Denver was nervous. After all, this was the only chance for the planet to awaken. The size of the awakened planet would determine the potential of each planet. The bigger the planet was, the easier it was to convert high-level energy. For example, magic power, star power, origin energy. There was even the possibility of spirit energy. If the planet was small, it could only be converted into low-level energy. For example, true energy, astral energy, perception, and so on. If I want to convert high-level energy, the diameter of the planet should be at least 15 kilometers. If it's less than 15 kilometers, then most likely, it's a low-level energy. It can only be used to create civilizations like fighters or cards. John Denver thought to himself. Awakening begin. As soon as the awakening teacher finished speaking, strange energy flowed out from the crystal ball. Through John Denver's right palm, it slowly merged into his body. A moment later, John Denver found himself in his mind. Suddenly, a blurry space appeared. This space was filled with chaos. There were no objects. From top to bottom, left and right, it gave off an air of emptiness. It was as if the universe had just opened. Is this the awakening space? John Denver knew. Later, a planet would be born in this space. He observed the awakening space for a while. After confirming that there were no problems, John Denver began to calm down and concentrate. He concentrated on awakening the planet. The time he could awaken was only a few minutes. The process of awakening the planet was not complicated. It would not last long. It all depended on everyone's talent. A few minutes passed. John Denver slowly opened his eyes. A hint of joy appeared on his face. He could clearly feel it. Within the awakened space, in nothingness, a yellow dot appeared. This yellow dot was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its appearance gradually became clearer. It was a sphere. John Denver knew. This was the planet he had awakened. It was like a cell growing into an embryo. However, time was much faster. About 5 minutes passed. The planet slowly took shape. This was a planet with an earth and yellow surface. He quietly floated in the awakening space. But the next moment, when John Denver saw the size of the planet, his expression changed slightly. This was an extremely small planet. It looked less than a kilometer in diameter. What was this concept? It was even smaller than some slightly larger squares. True enough. John Denver felt helpless. During the normal simulation test, John Denver's results were not very good. It could be said to be average. It was not easy to awaken a planet. A smaller diameter was very normal. Such a small planet, let alone high-level energy, even low-level energy would be hard to convert. John Denver thought. Awakening a planet was just the beginning. A planet in the complete sense was a planet of life. Life had to be born. Only then could it be considered a successful awakening. It was divided into 3 steps. Step 1, awakening a planet. Step 2, convert the origin energy into all kinds of energy. Step 3, catalyze life. He completed these 3 steps. When there's the birth of life on the planet, it could be considered a true awakening. The birth of life was closely related to energy. The higher the energy level of the planet, the higher the probability of life being born. And the energy came from the transformation of the origin energy. The bigger the planet was, the higher the probability of origin energy converting into advanced energy. And energy was divided into ordinary energy and extraordinary energy. Extraordinary energy refers to true chi, vitality, magic power, battle chi, origin power, spiritual energy, and so on. Ordinary energy was ordinary energy. For example, light energy, wind energy, electric energy, geothermal energy, chemical energy, and so on. Normal energy could also give birth to life. But the probability was very small. Moreover, they would be born of ordinary life. There was no potential. It looked like John Denver's awakened planet was less than a kilometer in diameter. The probability was even lower. It was almost impossible to give birth to life. Which meant awakening failed. Inside the patrol room, the school leaders as well as the class teachers and teachers of each class gathered together. They were paying attention to the most important awakening ceremony of the year. All of them looked calm, but their heart was even more nervous than the students in the awakening room. After all, this was related to the school's results. If there were many successful students and the planets were large, the school would also benefit greatly. Their fame would rise. It would also be easier to recruit students next year. Number 17 has successfully awakened. The diameter of the planet is 8 kilometers. Number 28 has successfully awakened. The diameter of the planet is 13.5 kilometers. Number 33 has successfully awakened. The diameter of the planet is 7.2 kilometers. As time passed, one after another, voices were heard. Examinee number 8, planet diameter 28.5 kilometers. A teacher shouted. Instantly, it attracted a lot of attention. 28.5 kilometers? This is one of the top geniuses. Which class is this? It seems to be Class 1. Class 1's results are really good. The principal nodded slightly as he listened to the discussion. This year's results were considered very good. 2 students with a diameter of more than 25 kilometers had appeared. Candidate 81, planet diameter 0.81 km. A teacher read the result of John Denver's awakening. 0.81 km? It's less than a kilometer. I'm afraid it'll be hard to even give birth to life. I'm not even afraid. According to the previous records of the Federation, the diameter of the planet is less than 1 kilometer, although there is still a theoretical possibility. No one has ever successfully born life. What a pity. The teachers shook their heads and sighed. Not too surprised. In the previous year's awakening results, the diameter of the planet that was less than 1 kilometer was not a minority. Such a small planet, it's almost impossible to give birth to life. If I can't give life to a planet, then it means that you failed to awaken. In the future, I can only become a commoner. Inside the awakening room, John Denver felt a little unwilling. Once life could not be born, this meant that the awakening had failed. He would never have another chance in the future. It was impossible to change fate. John Denver came from an ordinary family. If he did not successfully awaken a planet, he could only work for other planet owners. It was not much different from the farmers who sold their bodies to the landlords in ancient times. Ding dong. At this moment, a strange voice sounded in John Denver's mind. I detected that the host is awakening a planet. The God-level deduction system is activated. John Denver was stunned for a moment before he reacted. The system? You finally came. He immediately looked into his mind. In his mind, a panel appeared. Planet name, none. Planet level, 0. Planet diameter, 0.81 kilometers. Planet species, 0. Deduction route, none. After everyone successfully awakened the planet, there was a planet data panel. The difference was, a deduction route appeared on John Denver's screen. It was obviously a product of the system. John Denver looked at it carefully and asked, "System, the deduction route is determined by me?" The system did not reply. It was a tacit agreement. "System, help me deduce the path of life on this planet," John Denver thought for a moment and said. A moment later, a few lines appeared on the panel. Path of deduction, birth of life on the planet. Deduction result. Convert origin energy into extraordinary energy, and then catalyze life. Success rate, 0.01%. Convert origin energy into normal energy, and then catalyze life. Success rate, 0.1%. Convert origin energy into light energy, and then perfect the surrounding environment of the planet, creating a good cradle for the birth of life. Over time, slowly wait for the birth of life. Success rate, 99%. A total of 3 deduction routes appeared on the panel. John Denver looked. The probability of converting the origin energy into extraordinary energy is only 0.01. Even if it is converted into ordinary energy, there is almost no chance of life being born. He saw the first 2 routes. John Denver was not surprised at all. In the third type, there was a 99% chance. This was almost a certainty. What he saw was somewhat mysterious. It was to allow the planet to generate its own life. Perfect the environment around the planet and allow life to be born on its own. Would that be the same as Earth in his previous life? Looking at the third deduction route, John Denver could not help but raise his eyebrows. The planet that just awakened is equivalent to a lifeless place, just like Saturn and Mars. John Denver thought to himself, it's just that this world has origin energy. It can be converted into spiritual energy and other strange extraordinary energy. It can directly catalyze a life. It's almost impossible for Mars to automatically produce life. John Denver could not help but think of the original Earth. Earth was the only living planet that humans had discovered in the previous universe. Even so, the birth of life on Earth was also the result of various coincidences. Earth had a history of 4.6 billion years. It was not until 500 to 500 million years that life was born. It could be said, the birth of life was a miracle. The third route given by the system is similar to Earth. John Denver could not help but think, from the process of life on Earth, we need water, suitable sunlight, temperature, and the atmosphere. Only then can life be born and developed. But these conditions are not so easy to satisfy. Water, suitable sunlight, temperature, atmosphere, etc. It's equivalent to creating an environment on Mars in my previous life, and then allowing Mars to automatically generate life. This is almost impossible. If I didn't have the deduction system, I definitely wouldn't be able to figure out what kind of degree is appropriate. For this world, this method was simply impossible. Thousands of years of planet awakening. There were only a few ways to create life. The most common and best used. It was to convert the origin energy into extraordinary energy. Under the catalyst of extraordinary energy, a planet would easily give birth to life. Moreover, there was a probability of an extraordinary being born. The more advanced the born life was, the stronger the vitality of the planet, the better the future. If it was an ordinary life form, naturally, the development potential could not be compared to the planet where supernatural beings were born. If I use the third route to produce life, it should be an ordinary life. John Denver thought of this. There was no unwillingness in his heart. But there was also a trace of excitement. After all, this was a life born naturally, without much interference from external forces. If it was the way life was born in the past, it was like putting spiritual energy into Mars. It would simply and roughly catalyze life. This method could quickly give birth to life. But it was still artificially created. It was equivalent to creating an ecosystem. After that, he had to take care of it all the time. One mistake, the ecosystem would collapse. If life was born naturally, after that, it was just like Earth from his previous life. There would be more and more lives, so John Denver did not need to take care of them. One was an artificial ecosystem. One was the natural ecosystem. Which was better? One could tell at a single glance. Although the probability of life born from this route was that of ordinary life, its development potential would not be any weaker than those planets that were catalyzed by extraordinary energy, and even stronger. Although ordinary life could not develop an extraordinary civilization, there was still technology. John Denver could create a technological civilization. If the technological civilization had developed to a certain level, it would not be inferior to those extraordinary civilizations. Even stronger. In John Denver's memory, many science fiction works from his previous life describe the shocking level of technology in the future. For example, in the technology of the God-class civilization, a drop of water could pierce through the entire Starfleet. A two-way foil could turn the entire solar system into a piece of paper. And two-way foil. It was only the simplest cleaning tool in the God-class technology civilization. Above the God-class technology civilization, there were even more powerful existences. It was no exaggeration to say that the development of science had no end. Thinking of this, John Denver made a decision. But in reality, John Denver had no choice now. The third route had a 99% success rate. It was almost a certainty. System: use the third deduction route to help me deduce the various conditions for the birth of life, John Denver ordered. Soon, the results of the deduction came out. Water, suitable sunlight, temperature, atmosphere, and other data appeared in John Denver's mind. John Denver looked. At the same time, he was observing the condition of the planet he had just awakened. This Earth-yellow planet was no different from most newly awakened planets. On the surface, it was mostly sand and stones. The temperature was below zero. It was extremely cold. There were no traces of water. The environment was rather harsh. It was not suitable for living. Naturally, it was impossible to give birth to life. According to the data given by the system, John Denver began to modify. The first was the appropriate temperature and sunlight. Originally, Earth had the existence of the Sun, so it had this condition. In the awakened space, there was only one small planet. Fortunately, there was origin energy in this world. It could be converted into all kinds of energy. John Denver directly converted the origin energy into light energy. It was the creation of an artificial sun. The size, position, and distance of this artificial sun. It was set according to the deduction data. In the awakening space, outside the yellow planet, a golden energy ball appeared. It looked like a glowing star. In reality, it was just an energy body that was converted from the origin energy. The artificial sun was born. John Denver realized that half of his origin energy had been consumed. John Denver heaved a sigh of relief. Inside the artificial sun was a nuclear fusion reaction. Light energy, an ordinary energy, was produced. If it was converted into extraordinary energy, then the origin energy would be consumed even more. Under the sunlight, the temperature on the surface of the yellow planet began to rise bit by bit. Following this trend, he would be able to go from negative to positive soon. The problem of temperature and sunlight was solved. Next, John Denver began to deal with the problem of the atmosphere and water. As the owner of this small planet, John Denver had the greatest authority. Just like the Creator, he could modify his own planet at will. But if there was no divine-level deduction system, a newborn planet was like a newborn baby. It was extremely fragile. One modification that was not good could collapse a planet, even resulting in death. The setting of the atmosphere was relatively simple. John Denver quickly set it up. As for water, it was slightly troublesome. However, with the help of origin energy, John Denver converted hydrogen and oxygen. Step by step, he synthesized a portion of water. On the Earthen planet, it was gradually covered by water. The surface of the planet slowly changed color. In the end, it became a small ocean. Land occupied only a small portion. Other aspects. John Denver had adjusted the gravity, magnetic field, crustal movement, and so on. It was the same as Earth in his previous life. The birth of life was a relatively long process. After setting according to the system's deduction data, the shape and environment of this planet were already perfect. Compared to Earth in his previous life, it was not worse. However, the birth of life still required time. The system's deduction time was about 100 million years. According to lore, the time flow in the awakened space was the same as the real time flow outside. 1:1. In other words, if he really had to wait for the birth of life, it would take over 100 million years. John Denver would not be able to live another 10 lifetimes. Fortunately, the origin energy could accelerate time. John Denver did not hesitate. He used less than half of his origin energy. Time acceleration of awakening space. 1 to 10. 1 to 100. 1 to 10,000. 1 to 100 million. until it accelerated to 1 to 1 trillion. John Denver stopped. As long as there was enough origin energy. Theoretically, it could be accelerated infinitely. But not many people would do that. Other planets were equivalent to an artificial ecosystem. Not to mention accelerating. He couldn't take care of it all day. It was possible that some unexpected accidents might occur. This would cause the ecosystem to collapse. For example, there was a student. After the birth of life, he did not take care of him for a few days. The result, the planet's ecology collapsed. All its life was gone. This caused the planet to degenerate. It became a dead star. The student was also demoted from the planet master to become a commoner. During this extremely fast acceleration process, the entire planet underwent a drastic change. In 100 million years, the sun continued to shine on the surface of the planet. The surface temperature slowly rose. It rose to an extremely high number. The crust slowly moved. In the sky, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. There were clouds piling up. There was heavy rain drifting down. The shape of the land also changed greatly. In the small ocean, the water temperature was high. Various gases began to appear. For example, reducing gas, carbon monoxide, hydrogen, ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, and so on. These gases formed organic molecules. As time passed, some small molecules of organic compounds began to dehydrate, gradually synthesizing proteins. Through thermal polymerization, the small molecules formed organic polymers such as protein, polysaccharide, nucleic acid, etc. Protein was the main substance that formed an organism. Polysaccharides, sugars, and so on were the skeletons that formed many cells, the main components of the cell wall. There was also nucleic acid as genetic material. These organic macromolecules are beginning to evolve into primitive single cells. These are the three parts of the birth of life. First, gases synthesize small organic molecules. Second, small organic molecules were synthesized into organic polymers. Third, organic polymers evolved into primitive single-celled life. It looked simple. But to be natural, it's like the parts of a dump were automatically assembled into a car. The odds were slim. It could only be described as a miracle among miracles. Even with system help, this process still took 100 million years. Of course, at a time flow rate of 1 trillion. It was less than an hour outside. Finally, in a body of water at a high temperature, the first life on the planet was born. In a hot spring with boiling water, a microorganism that could adapt to high temperatures was born, thermophilic bacteria. Although it was just a tiny bacterium, but it could also be considered a creature meaning. This small planet, which was less than a kilometer long, gave birth to the first life. To become a real-life planet, this represented the successful awakening of the planet. John Denver became a planet master. Seeing this tiny thermophilic bacterium, John Denver heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, John Denver noticed that the panel in his mind had also changed. Planet name, none. Planet level: 1. The newly born planet is extremely fragile and unstable. If one is careless, it would disappear like a meteor. Planet diameter, 0.9 kilometers. The size of the planet depends on the life force of the planet. The stronger the life force, the larger the planet. Planet species, 1. Deduction route, none. The diameter of the planet is a little more? John Denver raised his eyebrows. It was not too strange. The size of a planet completely depended on the life of a planet. The so-called life depended on the following three aspects. Life level of the planet. For example, humans were considered high-level life forms. It provided more life than a lion. A lion's health level was higher than a grass. Naturally, the life force provided was even more. And so on. As for the lowest level of life like thermophilic bacteria, Their life force was pitifully low. Number of life on the planet. The more life, the stronger the life force of the planet. Planet species richness. The richer the planet, the higher their life force. Now, John Denver only had one life on this planet. It was also the lowest grade microorganism. Naturally, there wasn't much life force. A planet over a kilometer in diameter. Putting it outside, it could be said that it was the lowest existence. But John Denver was not in a hurry. The evolution of this planet had just begun. The birth of thermophilic bacteria was only the first step. There would be more and more life after that. I'll name the planet Blue Star first. John Denver looked at the planet and found a familiar name. The surface of the planet was no longer earthy yellow. Instead, most of the area was covered by the ocean. It was slightly blue. Its name was Blue Star. John Denver checked. He discovered that there was still a quarter of the origin energy left. Origin energy was very expensive outside. Ordinary families could not afford it. Only when awakened, only the authorities would provide one free copy. John Denver did not want to waste it. He continued to consume the remaining energy to speed up the evolution of Blue Star. As the owner of this planet, John Denver could clearly sense all the changes happening on the planet. Inside the warm ocean, the number of thermophilic bacteria slowly increased. As time passed, other microorganisms began to appear. The first ones were the same as thermophilic bacteria, the lowest grade prokaryote. Time continued to pass. Prokaryotes evolved into protozoa. It was still the most primitive, simplest, and lowest creature. However, the structure and functions had changed a lot. A protozoan called cyanophyta, it evolved a characteristic that allowed photosynthesis. This kind of algae had strong adaptability. It could endure high temperatures, freezing, lack of oxygen, dryness, high salinity, strong radiation, and other harsh environments. Algae and some bacteria continued to photosynthesize. They created a large amount of oxygen. For the birth of a higher-level life, it provided sufficient conditions. At the same time in the ocean, there were some eukaryotic creatures with real nuclei, such as primitive sponges and jellyfish-like creatures. This also represented the birth of real animals and plants. Animals and plants were higher-level creatures. It could bring extraordinary life force to the planet. Due to the increase in life force, the planet was also gradually growing bigger. At this point, 300 million years had passed since the birth of the planet. Other than the evolution of life, there were also huge changes on the surface of the planet. There was more and more water. The oxygen content slowly increased. The land gradually disappeared. Almost all of them were submerged by the ocean. All creatures were born in the ocean. Due to the good environment John Denver had set up, the development of the species was much faster than Earth in his previous life. At this stage, John Denver had no choice but to stop because the origin energy had been completely exhausted. John Denver could only stop the acceleration of the planet. The size of the planet had also taken shape. From the very beginning, it was less than a kilometer. Now, it had grown to its current size. In his mind, the panel data was shown. Planet name, Blue Star. Planet level, Level 1. Planet diameter, 35.2 kilometers. Planet species, 215, does not include microorganisms and other lower life forms. There is no further notification. Deduction route, none. Even though they were all normal life forms, there were many different types and numbers. It provided a lot of life force. The size of the entire planet had skyrocketed to a shocking level. Those extraordinary stars outside. Despite their high level, the quantity and variety were far inferior. To the newly awakened extraordinary planet, to be able to have 5 or 6 species, one could be considered a genius. Use quantity to supplement quality. This was John Denver's strategy. At the same time, the awakening of the others outside was also coming to an end. When he awakened, The origin energy was exhausted. This represented the end of the awakening. When John Denver left the awakened space, he saw that most of the student awakening ceremony was over. Some were cheering and jumping, very excited. Some of their faces were filled with frustration, and they even wept bitterly. There was also complicated expressions. He did not know if they were happy or sad. All life, the success rate of planet awakening was not 100%. Plus, some planets that had successfully awakened were too small. There was almost no development potential. Therefore, only a few people were satisfied with the results. Extraordinary energy was divided into 4 levels: low, middle, high, and super. Low-level energy. There were true chi, spirit, perception, telekinesis, and so on. Middle energy. Mainly, vitality, combat aura, soul energy, etc. High energy. There were mainly origin energy, dragon chi, magic power, star power, psionic energy, and so on. Super energy. There were mainly spiritual energy, nuclear energy, void energy, and so on. The higher the energy level, the rarer it was. Among all the students who had successfully awakened, the amount of low-level energy converted was the highest. Intermediate energy was secondary. High-level energy could be counted on one hand. And super energy could only depend on luck. At the same time, inside the patrol room, the teachers were doing the final statistics. The awakening planet was only the first step. The key was to give birth to life on the planet. The first step of many people went smoothly. However, the problem was step 2. Number 1 awakened successfully. The final diameter of the planet is 11 kilometers. Number 2 awakened successfully. The final diameter of the planet is 12.6 kilometers. Number 3 failed to awaken. Number 4 failed to awaken. Number 38 awakened successfully. The final diameter of the planet is 23 kilometers. The final results of the students were read out, including those who had awakened successfully and those who had not. The school leader and the teachers at the side looked satisfied. The headmaster nodded slightly and said, "This time, the students' results are not bad. More than half of the students have successfully awakened a planet. Especially Maya Harris and Jared Fry. The diameter of their awakened planets are more than 25 kilometers. Although they couldn't compare to the top students of a secondary school, 2 top geniuses appeared at once. This result. We can also be ranked, Vice Principal chimed in. The others nodded in agreement. According to the general rules, those with a diameter of more than 20 kilometers could be called geniuses. Those over 25 kilometers were considered top geniuses. The probability of producing high-level energy was very high. Those over 30 kilometers were super geniuses. The transformation of high-level energy was almost certain. If nothing unexpected happened, they could successfully build a high-level civilization. There was a high probability that they could convert origin energy into super energy. And over 35 kilometers. It was called a monster. The probability of producing super energy was very high. Forget about River City, even Labrador Province where River City was located, there were very few. An unknown school like River City 7th Middle School, 2 top geniuses appeared. It was already the best result for the past 5 years. It was enough to make every leader happy. Number 81 awakened successfully, the final planet diameter. 35.2 kilometers? At this moment, the teacher's voice suddenly became sharp. The patrol room suddenly fell silent. All of them looked at the teacher strangely. 35.2 kilometers? How is that possible? One had to know. The female student who had a shocking talent in the previous middle school only awakened a planet with a diameter of 33 kilometers. This also broke the historical record of River City. More than 35 kilometers. However, that was considered a monster. Are you sure? Are you sure? The principal stared at the teacher who announced the results, and his tone suddenly became nervous. "Headmaster, see for yourself." The teacher who announced the results pointed at the screen in front of him. On the big screen, John Denver's awakening result was very large. There was no doubt. One by one, the school leaders and teachers thought. They all felt that it was inconceivable and absurd. They weren't a first-rate school. There was actually a genius student who broke the record. It really is 35.2. Really is. Our school actually produced a genius with a diameter of more than 35 kilometers? Which class is this John Denver from? He's hiding something. It seems to be Class 2. Class 2's results are pretty good. Listening to everyone's discussion, the principal waved his hand and said in a loud and clear voice, "Let's not talk about it for now. Quickly announce the final results." "The principal is right, I'll do it now." A vice principal personally ran to take charge. They had been silent for so many years. It wasn't easy to produce such a shocking result. Naturally, they had to publicize it. Soon, the last student had awakened. The door of the awakening room opened. The students rushed out impatiently. John Denver followed behind. He walked out of the awakening room. Once he came out, he saw a handsome boy surrounded by people. The surrounding people were discussing. The diameter of the planet awakened by Jared Fry is actually 28.5 kilometers. That's similar to Maya Harris. "You're amazing, Brother How." "Brother How, you should be called Young Master How." All kinds of praise and praise came in succession. However, the people surrounding him were not the biggest. It was a beautiful girl with a ponytail and a tall figure. John Denver naturally knew this girl, Maya Harris. She was recognized as a school belle by the 7th Middle School. She was the long-term number 1. "Maya Harris, congratulations. This time, you were able to awaken a planet with a diameter of 29.8 kilometers. The teacher in charge of maintaining order walked over to congratulate him. "Thank you, teacher. I've just been lucky," Maya Harris said modestly. But there was a hint of arrogance in her eyes. Everyone. At this moment, a vice principal walked over. The crowd suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked. The vice principal glanced at everyone, nodded slightly, and said loudly, "This time the awakening ceremony is successfully completed. Our school's results are not bad, more than half successfully awakened a planet. Among them, there are 210 people with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers. There are 23 planets with a diameter of more than 20 kilometers. There are 2 people with a diameter of more than 25 kilometers. They are Maya Harris and Jared Fry from Class 1. The vice principal's voice fell. Everyone's eyes turned to Maya Harris and Jared Fry. The two of them instantly became the focus. The discussion that had already stopped started again. More than 25 kilometers, wouldn't that be entering the ranks of top geniuses? We have 2 top geniuses this time? Amazing. However, the vice principal's words were not finished. Maya Harris and Jared Fry paused for a moment. Then, he raised his voice and continued, "I want to congratulate Class 2's John Denver. During this ceremony, the diameter of the awakened planet exceeded 30 kilometers. 35.2 kilometers. He broke the record set by a student not long ago. He created a new history in River City." Hearing the vice principal's words, everyone's first reaction was that they heard wrong. There was actually a student with a diameter of more than 30 kilometers? Or more than 35 kilometers? In the history of the school, there had never been such a result before. What was even more exaggerated was that it even surpassed the publicly acknowledged proud daughter of the heavens. Thar. How was that possible? And it also exceeded 35 kilometers. He would immediately enter the ranks of geniuses. Shoo-ah, shoo-ah, shoo-ah. Instantly, everyone turned their heads. Their gazes landed on John Denver. All of them had different expressions. Some exclaimed. Some were envious. Some were inconceivable. Some were confused. But no one was jealous. The people present did not even dare to dream of getting such results. Jared Fry and Maya Harris looked a little unnatural. Both of them had awakened more than 25 kilometers of planets. They had achieved the best result in the past 5 years. But in front of John Denver's 35.2 kilometers, they were overshadowed. Originally, it was only their moment of glory. Now, it was John Denver's alone. I originally thought there was no opponent in this school. I didn't expect. Maya Harris stared at John Denver, her fingers slightly clenched in her palm as she thought to herself, I will meet such a hidden guy. But the size of the initial planet is nothing. What's really important is the subsequent creation of civilization. John Denver, come with me. The vice principal waved at John Denver. He left the scene with John Denver. They went all the way to the teaching building and arrived in front of an office. Principal's office? John Denver looked at the sign outside the office and raised his eyebrows. Go in, the principal is waiting for you. The vice principal smiled. Then he turned around and left. John Denver knocked on the door. Come in. A dignified voice came from inside. John Denver pushed the door open and entered. He could see it at a glance. Sitting behind the desk, a man around 50 years of age with a rather dignified appearance. It was the headmaster of River City 7th Middle School, Ricky Brown. A level 4 planet lord with extraordinary strength. At this moment, Ricky Brown's voice was no longer as dignified as before. He put on a friendly smile. He stood up and said amiably, Student John Denver is here. Come, sit on the sofa over there. Principal Jung. John Denver had lived 2 lives. He was not restrained. He sat down next to the sofa. Seeing John Denver's calm expression, Ricky Brown nodded inwardly. He was neither arrogant nor impatient. No wonder he could suddenly charge out and become a dark horse. John Denver. Ricky Brown looked at John Denver and said, First of all, congratulations on taking the first place in our school's awakening. It is also a new record for River City. Thank you. For these, John Denver did not mind. Ricky Brown was not a formalistic leader. After a short exchange of greetings, he went straight to the point. According to the rules of our school, since your awakening result is first, Ricky Brown smiled and said, we will give you $500,000 federal dollars. 500,000? John Denver's eyes narrowed. What was his identity? He had been an orphan since he was young. He had grown up with the help of the Federation. 500,000. For John Denver, naturally, it was a huge sum of money. And his planet was different from other people who had successfully awakened. John Denver had created a natural and ecological planet. Theoretically, he did not need too many resources. As long as he had enough origin energy, which was very expensive, he would be good. An official price of $1 million federal dollars was needed to buy origin energy. With John Denver's wealth, he couldn't afford it. Plus your results this time, you've broken River City's historical record, so. Ricky Brown continued, the school has decided to give an additional 500,000. Taken together, $1 million in total. It was just enough for a portion of origin energy. Thinking of this, John Denver looked at Ricky Brown and said, these rewards, can you? I want to exchange it for origin energy. Although the price of origin energy was $1 million, that was the official price. If he was to buy it himself, since he had no connections or channels, that was not the fixed price. Since there was a chance, John Denver was not polite. Ricky Brown did not care about these details. Instead, he looked at John Denver in confusion and asked, do you want to trade it to origin energy? You don't consider using this money to buy other planet resources first? As usual, since his planet had just awakened, he had to cultivate more life first. All kinds of resources were needed to cultivate life. For example, buying extraordinary live plants and animals. Those were needed on the planet as the food for intelligent life. These required a large amount of money. Let's trade it to origin energy first. The energy on my planet is a bit special, John Denver smiled and said. Sure, I just happen to have a portion of origin energy, so I'll give it to you as a reward. Ricky Brown stood up. From the drawer of the desk, he took out a packaging box. Inside the box, it was a transparent crystal ball. There was origin energy. Ricky Brown understood John Denver's thoughts. However, he did not care. Instead, there was even more appreciation. To become a powerful planet lord, it was better to have thicker skin. John Denver took it. He didn't immediately open it. Of course, he still had this bit of trust. That's right, John Denver, can you tell me, what is the initial energy of your awakening? Ricky Brown looked at John Denver. He asked the question he was concerned about. The size of an awakened planet. It was just an appearance. Most importantly, was the level of the initial energy. Only at high levels would it be possible to create a high-level civilization. Planets with a diameter of more than 30 kilometers were usually advanced civilizations, even a super-civilization was possible. John Denver's planet was 35.2 kilometers in diameter. The probability was much higher. The energy I awakened is somewhat special. John Denver vaguely reminded. Could it be super energy? Or was it the rarer one? Void energy? Tong Zhenheng immediately guessed. There was a hint of anticipation in his eyes. In the super energy, spiritual energy was the most common. The rest were similar to the void energy. It was relatively rare. Throughout the history of the 7th middle school, a student who awakened a super energy had never appeared before. Now there was John Denver. Naturally, Tong Zhenheng was looking forward to it. I let the principal down. It's not super energy. John Denver shook his head. Not super energy? Ricky Brown's eyes froze, but he immediately reacted and said, that's high-level energy. High-level energy isn't bad either. In the future, you can create a powerful high-level civilization. It's not high-level energy, John Denver said. Listening to John Denver's answer, the smile on Ricky Brown's face froze. Logically speaking, John Denver's awakened planet was over 35 kilometers in diameter. The probability of converting to super energy was very high. Even if his luck was bad, high-level energy should be guaranteed. Ricky Brown never thought about it. It was not even a high-level energy. Naturally, there was some imbalance in his heart. But he had been the principal for decades. It quickly returned to normal. After a brief silence, Tong Zhenchen looked at John Denver and asked, is it middle energy? It's not impossible to have middle energy. Many powerful intermediate civilizations are no less powerful than advanced civilizations. Tong Zhenchen's voice comforted himself somewhat reluctantly. With John Denver's results and only then converting into intermediate energy. It was like first place in the college entrance exam went to a school that couldn't even rank 211. It's not middle energy. John Denver told the truth. Tong Zhenchen was speechless for a long time. He did not know what to say. Not even intermediate energy. There was only low-level energy left. This made him not even know how to comfort him. Low-level energy is fine. With the size of your planet, you will have an advantage over others. Tong Zhenheng tried to comfort him. Although John Denver's energy was not satisfactory, in the end, he was the first place. Ricky Brown still felt that there was potential. It's not low-level energy. John Denver was helpless, but he still told the truth. The energy I converted is a little special, not extraordinary. It's light energy. It's just normal energy. Puff. Puff. Hearing this, Tong Zhenchen's body trembled. His hand trembled. The teapot he had just picked up trembled. He almost hit the table. Even though Tong Zhenchen was a level 4 planet lord, he had been the principal for decades. It could also be said that he had experienced great storms. But he was also shocked by John Denver's words. You're a genius who broke River City's historical record. The transformed energy was not extraordinary energy? It was ordinary energy? Saying it out loud, no one would believe it. One had to know, according to the previous records, the planets with normal energy were very small. The largest one did not exceed 15 kilometers. There was no such thing as John Denver. It completely did not conform to the normal law of planet awakening, but Ricky Brown also knew John Denver could not lie. This sort of thing, at that time, would be clear. Principle: if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. John Denver stood up and prepared to take his leave. Sure, you can go back first. Ricky Brown did not know what to say. He had a sentence prepared. However, John Denver's shocking news disrupted everything. After leaving the principal's office, John Denver followed the stream of people. He left the school quietly. Outside the school gate, there were already many media outlets and people from all walks of life. Hearing the wind, he went out. John Denver was in the crowd. He did not attract much attention. He went straight back to his home. John Denver was an orphan. It was a relief room in the Federation. Upon returning home, John Denver could not wait to open the crystal ball that he had just obtained from the principal. Inside the crystal ball, it was an intact origin energy. With this origin energy, I can accelerate Blue Star and let the planet continue to evolve rapidly, John Denver thought to himself. He put down the crystal ball. John Denver turned on his second-hand communicator. This kind of communicator was a product of the immortal cultivation civilization. Inside, there was an ultra-micro teleportation array. The information could be teleported directly. He opened it. The screen was instantly filled with all kinds of news. Without a doubt there was news of John Denver breaking the records of River City. It was already known by the various forces. Many forces sent out congratulations and cooperation request. John Denver browsed through a few pages. Most of them belonged to some capital or planet management companies. There were also some local families. He was careless. They would provide resources to help John Denver build a planet. Of course, this was not free. Naturally, those forces would occupy the shares of the planet in exchange of good reputation, win-win cooperation. Ordinary civilians like John Denver were the favorite of all major capitalists. In reality, if John Denver did not have the deduction system, he had no choice but to accept the goodwill of these forces. From the crowd of capital, he would choose one. After all, the creation of the planet needed a lot of resources and funds. If the family did not have tens of millions of funds, they couldn't even think of becoming a level 1 planet lord. Unlike John Denver, others who created planets needed at least a professional planet management team. They were responsible for the maintenance of the planet's ecosystem and the future deduction. If one of them did not pay attention, the ecology of the planet was very likely to collapse. Not to mention, to create an extraordinary civilization needed all sorts of expensive resources. These required a large amount of money. Fortunately, John Denver had a deduction system. There was no need for a management team. Blue Star was also a natural ecosystem. There was no need for John Denver to take care of it. All he needed to do was follow the order and evolve normally. John Denver still saw it. There were a few different messages. They wanted John Denver to endorse their company's products. The endorsement fee was also quite high. But very quickly, the other party sent a new message. They cancelled the endorsement deal. The reason? John Denver did not need to think to know. They probably understood the fact that the initial energy he converted was just ordinary energy. Capitalism is real. John Denver sighed. Ordinary energy planet. People wouldn't even bother to look. In this world, there were naturally planets made of ordinary energy, but none of them got up. In the end, the ecosystem collapsed and they turned into a dead star. Or they would be crushed into pieces by all sorts of supernatural planets. A normal person to fight against magicians, practitioners, and other extraordinaires. Wasn't that funny? However, John Denver wanted to prove that ordinary planets could still develop a powerful civilization. After cooking himself a simple but nutritious meal, John Denver did not rest. Instead, he continued the evolution of the planet without stopping. He entered the awakening space. A blue planet was slowly moving. John Denver observed a few times. After confirming that there were no abnormalities, he began to use his origin energy. A new round of acceleration, but this time, John Denver did not plan to use a ratio of 1 to 1 trillion. The faster he accelerated, the more origin energy consumed. This was all the origin energy John Denver currently had. He had to save some. After setting a new acceleration rate, John Denver was calm and collected. He looked like a spectator observing the evolution of this planet. On Blue Star, time passed quickly. The ecology of the entire planet was also undergoing drastic changes. The blue algae played a crucial role. This was the first oxygen-producing creature on the planet. The cyanobacteria used solar energy to synthesize water and carbon dioxide into organic nutrients, and at the same time released oxygen as exhaust gas. Oxygen was produced by the blue algae. The lack of oxygen on the planet had completely changed. For the birth of a higher life form, it provided a good environment. The era of monocytes had passed. The multicellular life began to develop. According to the history of Earth in his previous life, this place should be the end of the primordial universe. It was about to start the tide of modern life. Earth from his previous life was 4.6 billion years old. It could be divided into 4 universes: ancient, Archean, Proterozoic, and Phanerozoic. Ancient, 3.8 billion years ago, it was a desolate place without any life. Archean universe, 2.5 billion years ago, a single-celled life was born. Proterozoic universe, 600 million years ago, multi-celled life was born. Phanerozoic, 6 million years ago, advanced plants and animals began to appear. Creatures gradually evolved into more advanced animals. Animals already had a shell and a clear skeleton structure, so they were called the Phanerozoic. This was the division of Earth. On Blue Star, John Denver was too lazy to think about other names. The 4 names were the same to divide the history of Blue Star. At this moment, it happened to be at the end of the primordial era. It was about to open the tide of advanced life. The beginning of the universe, Cambrian. The first life force burst forth. Because the lower life forms could not adapt to the new planet environment, a new higher life form appeared. For example, arthropods, brachiopods, vermicular animals, sponges, chordates, and other animals that were basically the same as modern animals. It was represented by the trilobite. It laid the foundation for the evolution of life in the Phanerozoic. Compared to when the planet had just awakened, there was a huge increase in life points. Even though it had not evolved to the level of modern life, the number of species sufficed. At the same time, the size of the planet was also kept increasing. In John Denver's mind, the planet's data has changed dramatically. Planet name, Blue Star. Planet level, Level 1. Planet diameter, 50.4 kilometers. Planet species, 312. Deduction route, none. 312 species? John Denver slightly raised his eyebrows. If one counted the total number of species since the birth of life on the planet, it's not just that. It could be 1,000. But with the emergence of new species, some low-level species did not adapt to the new environment or were invaded and occupied. They gradually died out. The life force counted the species of life on a real planet. These extinct species would not be counted. Although many species were extinct, there were more new species. And better health provide more life force. Evolution continues. After a brief thought, John Denver continued to accelerate the awakening space. He observed all this in silence. From the birth of the planet to now, John Denver hadn't intervened yet. But for easier observation, John Denver still divided a few eras for Blue Star. The most important are four: ancient, Archean, Proterozoic and Phanerozoic. Ancient, the first 300 million years, no life. Archean: 300 to 400 million years, the birth of single-celled life. Proterozoic: 400 to 500 million years ago, multicellular life was born. Phanerozoic: 500 million years ago, advanced animals and plants began to emerge, the embryonic form of modern life. Apparently, Phanerozoic is the key. John Denver was in the Phanerozoic. A few more periods were subdivided. He didn't follow Earth. The division was so detailed. Only a few major periods were planned. After all, in his past life, the diameter of the Earth exceeded 10,000 kilometers. Blue Star was only 50 kilometers. It was far from it. There are not so many species that have developed. The first period of division, John Denver named Cambrian. The planet is in the middle of its Cambrian explosion. Low-grade fishes, paleo-amphibians and paleo-animals appeared successively. Insects and amphibians thrived. Paleophytes were dominated by marine algae during this period. The original plants began to land. Pteridophytes also developed and flourished to the extreme, forming dense forests, an important coal-forming period. In the sea, the earliest vertebrates began to emerge, jawless fish. The level of life was rising further. At the same time, crustal movements within the planet were also taking place quietly. The surface of the planet was no longer entirely covered by the ocean. Many large fold mountains appear. High mountains, hills, mountains, and so on. Blue Star's terrain began to become colorful. Fortunately, it's different from the previous Earth because Blue Star was much smaller. Plus John Denver used the deduction system. So, there's no extinction here. Over time, the Cambrian also came to an end. At the same time, more new species are born. John Denver was not stingy with the acceleration using origin energy. A new period arrived. This is Jurassic. John Denver was still too lazy to name, directly adopting the name of the last Earth. They were the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. Finally, John Denver adopted the name Jurassic, the most famous period. This was also the most important period for Blue Star so far. The Cambrian period ended. At the beginning of the Jurassic period, the species on the planet had reached an unprecedented height. Whether it was quantity or health level, it was far more than before. The life force bonus was also very objective. The most eye-catching thing was the rapid increase in the diameter of the planet. On the planet panel, there was a corresponding change. Planet name, Blue Star. Planet level, Level 1. Planet diameter, 83.6 kilometers. Planet species, 502. Deduction route, none. And the arrival of the Jurassic era accelerated the growth. John Denver was also looking forward to it. In Earth from his previous life, Jurassic was probably the most famous era. The main reason was naturally because of a household name large animal, dinosaur. This kind of inconceivable creature was used by countless film and television animation works. I wonder if a dinosaur will be born on Blue Star? John Denver could not help but have such an idea. It was just that he also knew Blue Star's condition was completely incomparable to Earth's. The area was still too small. There was no room for dinosaurs to grow. It was very difficult to produce large creatures like dinosaurs. The truth was as John Denver expected. After the Jurassic period began, the entire planet became warm and dry. A primitive mammal appeared. The first vertebrates that could fly also appeared at this time. The earliest turtle in the world, the original jaw turtle, was born. The earliest snakes, moths, bees, and many new small mammals appeared. Then, birds began to appear. Mammals developed slowly. The flowering plants also appeared for the first time. It also represented the highest and largest group in the plant world, quilt plant. They stepped onto the stage of evolution. For example, Mulan, Lu, Feng, poplar, palm, and so on. The quilt plants rapidly flourished, covering the surface. The emergence and development of angiosperm provided a large amount of food for certain animals, such as insects, birds, and mammals. In terms of animals, horses, antelopes, bison, and other common species were born. In the structure of the planet, the land and sea gradually became distinct. The grassland, high mountain, forest, hill, basin, the desert. One by one, the crustal movement was stabilizing. The climate was more suitable for the survival of life. It was probably called life explosion. Then, Jurassic period. It was the Big Bang of life. The number and quality of the species that appeared were far from something that Cambrian could compare to. What made John Denver feel a little regretful was that the dinosaur that he had been thinking about for a long time never appeared. There were a lot of species that were different from Earth in his previous life. After all, they were two different planets. Evolution direction naturally could not be the same. Time approached the late Jurassic. Although this period was not long, it was the most colorful. All sorts of new species appeared, bringing the planet an extremely shocking life force. But from visual observation, the diameter of the planet had already exceeded 100 kilometers, and it was growing even more. There are more than 1,000 species on this planet. John Denver observed while estimating. If he took it out, it would probably scare a large group of people to death. One had to know, even a level 4 planet was almost impossible to have so many species. Not to mention that this was a planet that had just awakened not long ago. Having a dozen of them was already pretty good. He only felt a little regret that he could not see the dinosaur. Then John Denver looked. The next stage. The third generation of the universe. After the Cambrian and Jurassic period, there's another era. It was also the most critical and important period until the birth of the planet, humans. The intelligent life began to appear. Cambrian, Jurassic, and Anthropocene. Each of them was divided into representative creatures. Cambrian. Low-level primitive animals and plants appeared. Jurassic period. Advanced modern plants and animals appeared. The human era. An intelligent life form appeared. The current diameter of the planet reached over 100 kilometers. Plus the warm and humid climate in a unique environment gave more life and more advanced species a chance to be born. As the ancestor of humans, the ancient ape appeared. At the beginning of the human era, the first batch of ancient apes, the prairie ape, was born. After that, other apes appeared in chronological order. Ancient apes were born one after another in a direction closer to humanity. After the ancient ape, a humanoid ape appeared. The biggest difference between ancient ape and humanoid ape was that ancient ape was unable to use tools and the humanoid ape could. The development of the humanoid ape, according to the order, was divided into 4 stages: early ape man, late ape man, early Homo sapiens, and late Homo sapiens. The ending stage of the late Homo sapiens, modern humans began to form. In a forest, the first true human was born. As time passed, more and more humans appeared. For better survival, they fought against the surrounding beasts. The humans formed small groups. And the appearance of intelligent beings like humans brought a lot of life force. It was also to increase the size of Blue Star once again. Sure enough, the life force of intelligent life is completely incomparable to other species. John Denver watched the planet grow bigger. He smiled. The planet had evolved to this point. It could be considered as true voyage. One had to know that other people's extraordinary planet, an intelligent life, had been born from the start, and it was extraordinary. Currently, the entire planet, the number of humans is around a few hundred. John Denver was checking the human situation in every region. Thanks to the excellent environment of the planet, the newly born humans were not without food. The main threat was a powerful beast outside. But by grouping together, the humans made stone tools and other tools. They began to hunt huge beasts. They gradually became the ruler of this planet. As time passed, humans began to walk out of the lush forest. They chased away the beasts and occupied the fertile plains. Building a house, gathering plants that could be eaten, taming beasts, and building civilization step by step. The original text and language also appeared. The number of humans gradually increased. Gradually, friction and conflict began to arise between the various small groups. Someone died in battle. The winning group absorbed the losing group. They became stronger. After a cruel battle, two large groups were formed from dozens of smaller ones. The two most primitive tribes were born. One was called Desolate. One was called Barbarian. Both the Desolate tribe and the Barbarian tribe had a population of over 100 people. No one could swallow the other in one go. Small friction continued, but there was no major conflict. After decades of development and in the 10th generation, the Barbarian tribe welcomed a powerful leader. The leaders' names in the two tribes during the next generations were consistent. They were called Man and Desolate. The leader of this generation, Man, was a tall and strong warrior. The Barbarian tribe had always advocated force. They worshipped the powerful beasts in the wild. The leader kept challenging the warriors in the tribe. One by one, they increased the cohesion of the Barbarian tribe to an unprecedented level. The other fell behind. The leader began to fight against the Desolate tribe. The Desolate tribe could not resist. There were more wins than losses for the Barbarian tribe. As for the leader of the Desolate tribe, Desolate, it was quite different from Man. He had an average physique. There was an aura of weakness in his body. Compared to being brave and fierce, Desolate preferred to study the use of words and tools. He often thought alone until late at night. Interesting guy. For the first time, John Denver focused on a person. John Denver wanted to develop a technological civilization. The most important thing was naturally talent. Technological talent. Talents that could help with scientific research. He looked like the leader of the Barbarians. Although his physique was strong and he was very attractive, for John Denver, he was useless. Chief Desolate, John Denver saw the corresponding characteristics of this aspect. The main problem now was that Desolate faced a threat from the Barbarian tribe. System, help me deduce. If I help leader Desolate, how much will it affect the development of the Blue Star ecosystem? John Denver asked. Soon, the deduction was completed. The results of the deduction. If you are to help Desolate, it would lead to irreversible consequences. The probability of ecological disorder is 30%. If you helped secretly, the probability would be less than 1%. These two routes, there was almost no need for John Denver to think about it. Looks like I have to help secretly. John Denver immediately made his decision. As the creator and controller of the planet, John Denver's secret help was also very easy. He directly controlled the soil. He wrote in front of the leader Desolate. It was naturally written here. To be precise, was not even words. It was just some symbols. At this moment, the leader was staying under the tree he usually stayed under, worried about the future of the tribe. Do you know the biggest difference between humans and beasts? A line of text appeared at the feet of Desolate. The biggest difference? Desolate was stunned. He was just about to think, when he suddenly realized something. He was shocked. He jumped 3 meters away. You. What are you? Desolate was shocked. I'm from the sky, John Denver replied. Someone from the sky? Desolate looked at the words on the ground and gradually calmed down. As a member of a primitive tribe, he had a blind faith in the world. Looking at this miraculous method, he was soon convinced. Answer my question. John Denver continued to control the soil, writing. Desolate immediately fell into deep thought. He thought for a long time. However, he did not have a clue. His expression could not help but be a little depressed. It's wisdom, John Denver answered for him. Wisdom? Seeing this, Desolate's entire body shook. It was as if he had comprehended something. In terms of individuals, humans are far inferior to beasts, but John Denver typed, with intelligence, You can use tools and work together. That's why humans can defeat beasts. Become the master of this land. If you don't use wisdom, how can a weak human fight those ferocious beasts?" he wrote. With that, John Denver ended this exchange. He left behind Desolate in deep thought. This was also a test. If Desolate could not rely on his own wisdom and not let the tribe escape the crisis, then John Denver would give up. John Denver was not disappointed. After pondering for a long time, Desolate had obviously come up with a solution. He began to use his own wisdom. He took the initiative to invite the leader man to the junction of the two tribes for a friendly exchange. A perfunctory flattery. The leader was full of joy. A few jars of bad wine fell to their stomachs. Desolate took the initiative to propose to Barbarian as a sworn brother. They worked together to deal with the ferocious beasts outside. The atmosphere was brutal. Naturally, he did not refuse. After paying the price of friendship and resources, this alliance was successful. The Desolate tribe was temporarily freed from the crisis of war. A few years later, Desolate continued to lower himself. He recognized Barbarian as his big brother. Every year, a large amount of food, livestock and a woman. The Barbarian tribe no longer had the idea of attacking the Desolate tribe. At the same time, John Denver's secret instruction to Desolate also began. John Denver taught Desolate a lot of basic knowledge. These were familiar common sense. But in this primitive tribe, it's unheard of. Bear the humiliation. This was the first lesson John Denver taught Desolate. Expand the population and train the army. This was the second lesson. Army? What is this? Asked Desolate in confusion. How did your tribe defeat the giant saber-toothed tiger the other day? Teamwork. Army. John Denver answered briefly. Desolate nodded thoughtfully. John Denver's teaching was hard to learn. Always listening and rarely asking questions, then only think carefully after class. Time was like water, time was like a shuttle. Time passed day by day. In a blink of an eye, 20 years passed since the two tribes allied. From a green youth, Desolate grew up to a mature middle-aged man. After years of teaching, John Denver stopped, leaving Desolate alone in practice. Brave men, we bear the humiliation of 20 years, the time has come for revenge. The central square of the Desolate tribe, Desolate stood on the high platform. He gathered all the warriors of the tribe, getting ready to attack the Barbarian tribe. The past 2 decades, the Desolate tribe always submitted to the Barbarian tribe. The tribute was average, paid a lot of supplies and women. 20 years of peace. And in these 20 years, Desolate has been guided by John Denver. Agriculture was encouraged. Cultivate wild wheat, rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and other plants into crops. Domesticate wild boars, wild horses, bison, and wolves. Develop more advanced agricultural tools. Secretly train soldiers and make weapons. Improve text and language. After 20 years of development, the population of the tribe already surpassed the barbarians. Other aspects were also surpassed. The day of revenge arrived. Desolate! 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 The soldiers below were shouting his name. 20 years of rule let Desolate's prestige be higher than ever. The war between the two tribes broke out again. This time, the situation turned upside down. Although the number of soldiers on both sides was equal, about 2,000 people, the Desolate tribe was a real army. The barbarians still followed the traditional hunting team model. They weren't a match at all. Even the leader and the number one warrior was already pot-bellied after he spent 20 years drinking. His body had long been hollowed out by wine, leaving not much muscle. There was no suspense about the ending. The Desolate tribe defeated the Barbarian tribe without bloodshed. The leader was tied up in front of Desolate. There was no soft heart. He's being executed, and the latter absorbed the rest of the barbarians. At this point above the planet, there was only one tribe left. Unification was completed. The throne was honored by everyone. A small country named Summer was born. People started building cities. After completion, Desolate personally named it Great Walled City. Naturally, these were all achieved under the influence of John Denver. But years of hard work add to that. The poor medical conditions of the time dried up the oil in Desolate's lamp. With his remaining time, Desolate continued to devote to the improvement of productivity in various systems. Before death, Desolate kept shouting the word Father. Father. This was Desolate's name for John Denver. John Denver appeared, manipulating the air. In front of the sickbed, there was a ripple of shock. Father. Wild joy and tears. Desolate suddenly sat up. Tears flowed. Father, I have done what you have taught me, said Desolate excitedly. I saw it. You did a good job. John Denver replied. There was a wild smile. What do you wish? Asked John Denver. I don't have any wish, the only thing I care about. Desolate looked outside and said, it's the future of this country. There are so many outstanding children, I don't know who to choose as heir. Outside the house were Desolate's wife and children. The tribe encouraged fertility. Desolate led by example. He married more than 10 wives. The remaining children, excluding those who died, reached dozens. Among them, many had good character and wisdom. This made it difficult for Desolate to choose. Father God, please help me, help Xia Kingdom. Desolate endured the pain. He kowtowed towards the air. John Denver's gaze turned to the children outside the house. Desolate's children. There were a total of 43. 18 daughters went out. 25 sons remained. Besides the 5 who were too young, there were still 20 candidates left. As Desolate said, all of them had their own abilities, and none of them were incompetent. This was also the result of cultivating Desolate. One by one, John Denver scanned the 20 sons. At the same time, he activated the deduction system in his mind. System, help me deduce, who is the most suitable to be the next emperor of Xia Kingdom. A moment later, the results of the deduction came out. Line of deduction, best successor to the next emperor of Xia Kingdom. The results of the deduction. Reason, generosity and benevolent, resilient, powerful and high prestige. Seeing these 2 results, John Denver frowned. He was not very satisfied. Suddenly, John Denver thought of something. He immediately changed the way he said, change the deduction. Who is the most suitable candidate to inherit the throne, and who is the most beneficial to the development of Blue Star's technology? The result was also very soon. Line of deduction, the most advantageous candidate for both Blue Star technology and Xia country governance. The results of the deduction. Reason. Benevolent and kind, resilient. Extremely intelligent and had a desire to explore everything beyond ordinary people. The result was obvious. The system was explicit. John Denver looked at Chi in the courtyard. Sure enough, he looked different from others. The others were more or less sad. As for Chi, his expression was calm. Standing in a corner, looking at the sky, no one knew what he was thinking. Chi. John Denver also made a decision. In front of the wasteland, the word was formed from the dust of the air. Chi? Seeing this name, Desolate was surprised. Chi was ranked 18th. He was quite outstanding. But the only problem was, Chi was too young. He was only 8 years old. But as for father's instructions, Desolate had no questions. He immediately called the people outside and announced the name of the successor. When the shocked crowd dispersed, Desolate left a stunned look on his face. Chi looked rather weak. He was not impressive. But there was a pair of bright eyes. Here, I'll teach you from now on. Follow me to God, Father. Desolate pulled Chi down with a puzzled expression. Father? Kai looked around. He was confused. Under Chi's puzzled gaze, the air vibrated. A line of text appeared. Desolate, don't worry, I will help you. "Thank you, Father." Desolate was excited. He pulled Chi and bowed several times. After bowing, Chi said, "Father, that was? That's our God, Father." Desolate pointed to the sky. His face was filled with respect and piety. "Father? Heaven?" He seemed to understand but not completely understanding. Desolate's only concern was gone. It was the end of the wasteland. The expression on his face passed away peacefully. He was the first king of Xia Kingdom. The evaluation of later generations of him was extremely high. Even calling him Desolate Heaven King. Desolate's era ended, and the era of Chi had just begun. Everyone's desire for power wasn't that hot. In addition, Desolate's prestige was extremely high. Therefore, even though Chi was only 8 years old, Desolate's last order was still carried out well. He ascended to the throne. Because he was too young, all sorts of matters were mainly handled by the elders. Chi did not have much ambition. He spent most of his time following John Denver's instructions. It had to be said that Chi's talent greatly surpassed Desolate. A lot of knowledge. As soon as he was taught, he was able to draw inferences about other things. After a year of careful teaching, John Denver could basically tell Chi's IQ was very high. If it was in his previous life, he could probably become a scientist. John Denver was surprised to find out that Chi could actually tell that this planet was growing bigger and bigger. He was like a piece of unpolished jade. The more he taught, the more pleasantly surprised he discovered. Compared to Desolate, who had only taught for a few years, John Denver taught Chi for 10 years. Until Chi came of age, it was time to take charge. In these 10 years, the changes in Xia Kingdom were huge. Under Chi's indirect push, from the era of the tribe to the feudal era, words and language had developed to the point of being simple and useful. The system became more formal. It was the same as in his previous life. The government system here was also divided into the cabinet and the 6 departments. The population grew rapidly. This was the first time he had broken through 100,000 people. The cities were built one after another. The Great Wilderness City was the largest. It also became the capital of the Xia Kingdom. But in a peaceful place, many people had long held high positions, so they could not let go of their power. Once they were in charge of the government, many people would lose their previous power. The atmosphere in the Great Wilderness City became increasingly tense during the first few days of the administration. The rain was coming. On the street, there were not many people. They were mostly soldiers. Within the Xia Kingdom, other than the announcement of the main government, there were 2 main factions. One of them was known as the #1 warrior of the Xia Kingdom, Desolate's 8th son, Duff. Until today, this kind of worship of martial arts was still very popular in the Xia Kingdom. Tuff was brave. In addition, he led the army to fight wild beasts all year round. Among the soldiers and citizens, his prestige was very high. The other side was Desolate's eldest son, Benevolence. In addition, he was the eldest son. He had always been the successor with the highest voice. If John Denver hadn't intervened, perhaps he would inherit the throne. Originally, these 2 tried their best to assist Chi. They were ready to wait for the government to come, then they would retreat. But 10 years of power, toughening and reluctant to part with such a high position, a subtle change arose. Plus a group of supporters pushed them to fight even if they didn't want to. It wasn't that Chi had supporters. He was the rightful heir to the throne. Desolate's prestige was still very high in the hearts of the Xia people. Many old officials naturally wouldn't do anything against his will. But most people knew that among these 3 people, Chi's strength was the weakest. Other than that orthodox name, nothing could compete with the other 2. In the tense atmosphere, the day of governance had arrived. Naturally, Tuff's large number of soldiers would not wait for him to ascend to the throne and take the lead in making trouble. He led his loyal subordinates, surrounding the palace. After hearing the news, he hurried over. A large group of people followed behind. The two sides were squeezed into the narrow palace, confronting each other. Just then, there was a sudden change. Suddenly, arrows rained down. However, it was actually a rocket. The rocket did not fire at the people inside. It targeted a ditch in the palace, and the ditch was completely filled with black liquid-like substance. After receiving John Denver's instruction in the past 10 years, it was impossible that he was not prepared at all. Among the 6, he secretly controlled the department that was the least valued. He gathered all the talents, vigorously developing technology. Other than that, the personal guards left behind by Huang was also firmly controlled by Qi. Blue Star did not have any iron ore, so up until now, he could only create wooden arrows. The lethality was greatly reduced, but there were oil mines. Inside the palace, the black liquid buried in the ditch was naturally oil. If it touched fire, it would burn at once. This was a strategy that Qi had developed a few years ago. The personal guards had good training and equipment. However, they weren't a match for the tenacious army. The design and construction of the palace were the responsibility of the construction department. If he wanted to do something inside, naturally, it was easy. The palace was designed so narrowly. Naturally, he did that on purpose. The surrounding walls were very high. The palace door closed. It was hard to escape. The rockets kept falling. Instantly, the black oil in the ditch was ignited. The fire burned fiercely. Thick black smoke rolled up. It enveloped the entire palace. The tenacious army was stunned. No one had ever seen such a miraculous and shocking scene. The two sides added up to tens of thousands of people. Facing the thick smoke, they were all useless. Seeing the situation was bad, both of them immediately led the people out of the palace. But the only entrance to the palace was already surrounded by Qi and his guards. The rockets kept firing. Even Tough and his brave soldiers could not break through the lines of the guards. The fire grew bigger and bigger. The smoke grew darker and darker. People were constantly engulfed by the fire. Or if they inhaled too much smoke, they died on the spot. The palace was full of miserable screams. Tens of thousands of people, like harvested rice, fell one by one. 3 hours later, the battle had basically ended. Tough was brave, but he was outnumbered. He received more than 10 arrows and more than 10 wounds, then died. From the tens of thousands of soldiers, more than half were dead or injured. The remaining few dropped their weapons and surrendered. They did not join the battle. Benevolent's hiding place was kicked open, and he was captured by the guards. He knelt in front of Kai. "A merciful person cannot be an emperor," Qi recalled John Denver's words. Although he could not bear it, he still raised the stone spear and inserted it into his left chest. Just like that, the internal chaos that was about to happen was easily resolved. Qi officially sat on the throne. He began to govern personally. During the next 10 years, the position of the Ministry of Industry had risen. Craftsmen became the most respected profession. Outside, they were usually called masters. Qi also opened a college of making things, cultivating a large number of craftsmen. Among the craftsmen, Qi was the best. He created the new 4 great inventions: papermaking, printing, compass, and kerosene. It was all done by Qi. Of course, John Denver helped him. He passed on the relevant knowledge. Under John Denver's interference, the progress of Blue Star's civilization. It was much faster than Earth in his previous life. In just a few hundred years, from the tribal era to the feudal era and the development of technology were all achieved. Even in other domains, for example, art, literature, philosophy, and so on developed very quickly. At this moment, John Denver had no choice but to stop the acceleration of the planet because the origin energy was about to run out again. John Denver walked out the door and towards the Planet Association. He was going to find a way to make money. Planet Association was located in the center of River City. It was a 99-story skyscraper. The entire building was owned by the Planet Association. People came and went to the hall on the first floor. It was very lively. John Denver came to a window and waited in line to check the latest requests from the Planet Association. If he wanted to obtain origin energy, there were two methods. One was to spend money to buy it. The other was to plunder. The target of the plunder was the ownerless planet. So-called ownerless planet. This was the planet where the planet lord died. After all, everyone's lifespan was limited. Or it could be an accidental death. Once the planet master died, the planet that was left behind became ownerless. This way, they could then construct a passage to invade this planet and plunder the origin energy. This was also most of the main source of origin energy of the market. Soon, it was John Denver's turn. "Hello, what do you need?" The young staff member smiled and asked. "I want to ask. If I want to go to a houseless planet, what do I need?" John Denver asked. To the ownerless planet, if it's a level 1 planet, the procedures are very simple. As long as you pay a toll of 10,000, you can enter, the young staff member said. 10,000? John Denver raised his eyebrows. All these years, John Denver was frugal. He often did odd jobs and tutoring. He had saved 10,000. It was just that if he paid the toll, it would all be gone. No input, no output. Without any hesitation, John Denver handed his ID card and said, "Help me handle it." "Okay." The young staff took the ID card and said, "Please select a planet first." At this point, the young staff stopped. He glanced at John Denver and asked, "Is this your first time on a planet without a master?" "Yes, is there a problem?" John Denver replied. "It's like this. According to the latest rules of the Planet Association, if you're going for the first time, you can waive the toll," the young staff member explained. "It's not bad to have such a rule." John Denver smiled. He just saved 10,000. This was the first time, so John Denver was also more cautious. As recommended by the young staff, he chose a houseless planet of the warrior civilization. Normally speaking, as there was no one to take care of houseless planets, the ecosystem would gradually collapse. The energy on the planet would gradually decrease, and the entire planet would gradually lose its life force. In the end, it turned into a dead star. Of course, there were exceptions. However, such an exception was only one of the few. A warrior planet on the verge of collapse? I need to make some preparations. John Denver was not careless. After all, the martial arts civilization was also an extraordinary civilization. One mistake, perhaps the ship would be overturned in the gutter. He returned to his residence. John Denver immediately entered the awakening space. He found Chi, who was resting. "Father, you're here." Chi was very happy. Ever since he was in power, it had been several years since he had been able to contact John Denver. Compared to the tedious state affairs, Chi hoped to learn novel knowledge from John Denver. "Didn't you always ask what was outside the planet?" John Denver used the water vapor to display the text on the table. Chi's eyes widened. "Father, this is... Will he tell me the truth about this planet?" Chi was very smart. Not only did he realize that the planet was growing larger when he was young, he also guessed that there was another world outside the planet. Now, the opportunity is here. John Denver used words to communicate. "I will open a path to another planet. Through this path, the people here can enter another planet." "Another planet?" Chi was stunned. "Be prepared." John Denver continued to display the text. "The passage will open in 3 months. When the time comes, you will bring your army to that planet. Reminder: the natives on that planet are not ordinary people. They are extraordinary and stronger than a beast." Extraordinary? Chi was surprised and delighted. At the same time, there were traces of doubt. Extraordinary, as the name suggests, is a human with extraordinary strength. Even the strongest warrior in the Xia Kingdom. In the hands of extraordinaires, he is not a match. But the number of opponents is very small. So, you can rely on the army to suppress the numbers. In short, just like when dealing with wild beasts, you have to be prepared. John Denver reminded him. Then, he logged off. He left behind a look of shock and joy. For Chi, John Denver said a few short sentences. However, it was more shocking than any other novel knowledge in the past. There really is another world outside this planet. There's actually another planet where people live. It's really exciting, he muttered to himself. After the shock and joy, the anticipation grew stronger and stronger. Father will open the planet's passageway to plunder the resources of other planets? She had a preliminary guess. No matter what, this is Father's first mission to me. I must do it well. She could not wait to act. One after another, the most elite group of soldiers from the Xia Kingdom had been transferred. He trained them personally. Soon, 3 months passed. As for John Denver, who had accelerated time, only 1 day passed outside. Under the guidance of the staff, John Denver boarded a spaceship. This was a spaceship from the cultivation civilization. There were several formations carved on it. It could fly in the air. On the spaceship, there were many passengers. Most of them were level 1 planet masters like John Denver. Some traveled together. Some of them were acting alone. However, their goals were similar. It was all to plunder the origin energy from a hostless planet. The hostless planet was in the hostless galaxy. It was also the ship's destination this time. About an hour passed, the spaceship arrived at a large cave. This is the entrance to the galaxy. A person with a better understanding took the initiative to explain to John Denver and the other newcomers. There are many entrances like this, but you can tell from their appearance. The main purpose of the toll we pay is to stabilize the entrance. Everyone get ready. The staff member reminded them. Then, the spaceship entered the cave. John Denver felt a slight shake. A moment later, the spaceship passed through the hole. What came into view was a huge galaxy surrounded by planets. John Denver looked at it curiously. A staff member's voice rang in his ear. This is the galaxy. If you want to enter a hostless planet, just activate the channel imprint. There was no need for the staff to remind the few veterans. They quickly took out the imprint that was wrapped in crystal. The newcomers were also eager to give it a try. The people who came here for the first time should pay attention. The staff reminded, although the information about the hostless planets is the latest, there are many planets that haven't been updated for many years. No one knows what's going on inside. If you encounter a special situation, for example, the strength of the planet's natives exceeds the forecast, then let the people of your planet withdraw from the passage and close it to reduce losses. Not just the staff, there were also warm-hearted old men giving hints to the newcomers. John Denver listened for a while. He took out the channel imprint and began preparing to enter. 1 day outside was equivalent to 3 months in Blue Star. John Denver had deliberately adjusted the flow of time within the awakening space to a certain value. Within the great desolate city of Xia Kingdom, a military camp had been set up on a small hill not far from the palace. Inside the military camp, a team of brave soldiers was training with great fervor. She stood on the high platform and observed the soldiers of the Xia Kingdom. During these 3 months, she was personally responsible for training this group of soldiers. All of them were carefully selected from the whole kingdom and every single one of them was a warrior among warriors. Following John Denver's advice, Chi was doing his best. He was also looking forward to seeing the outside world. He had named this army, the Great Desolate Army. It was currently the strongest army in the Xia Kingdom. Warriors. Chi glanced at the soldiers below and his sound resounded throughout the square. Everyone immediately stopped and looked up at the stage. Today is the day of the conquest of the alien planets. Are you ready? Chi shouted. We're ready. The square shook with the soldiers' response. After 3 months of training, all the soldiers knew that there were other planets besides their planet which were inhabited by other beings. Father God, see, These are the brave men of my Xia Kingdom. Chi looked at the sky and spoke to himself. John Denver naturally saw this scene that happened in the Xia Kingdom. Chi really didn't let him down and specifically established an army to fight the natives of the alien planet. John Denver had been paying attention to the changes in the planet panel in his mind. Blue Star had really developed rapidly. Especially after the number of humans increased, various kinds of data had a significant improvement. Planet name, Blue Star. Planet level, Level 1. Diameter of the planet, 250.4 kilometers. Planet species, 1212. Deduction route, none. Now there were hundreds of thousands of people in the Xia Kingdom. Although the kingdom had broken away from the tribal era, it still maintained the martial spirit. One could even say that all the people of the kingdom were soldiers. More than 100,000 soldiers could be mobilized in the event of an emergency. Although this army only had 10,000 soldiers, all of them were the elite of the elites. They were equipped with the most advanced weapons and leather armor. In addition, Chi led them to train hard day and night, so their combat power was very strong. On the spaceship, the veterans entered their rooms one by one and took out the channel imprint to enter their respective target planets. Newcomers followed their example. After checking the situation of Xia Kingdom, John Denver also returned to his room and locked the door. Then he took out the crystal ball and activated the channel imprint. Immediately afterward, a hazy light appeared above the blue star in the awakening space. Eventually, this light dispersed and a 10 meters large door that was made of light appeared. Is this the passage between the planets? John Denver stared at the light door. It was releasing a subtle aura. It was an energy that did not belong to this world. In other words, there was another world on the other side of the passage. In the great desolate city. There was no need for John Denver to inform Chi because his men had also discovered this door of light and reported it. Chi immediately rushed over with his army. Everyone became shocked upon seeing this huge light door. What kind of technology is this? How can it create such a marvel? Chi's heart was greatly shaken. He would love to do some research right now, but he knew that at this moment, the most important thing was to lead his army through this gate of light. Warriors, the time has come to show your courage. Follow me. Let's go. Chi waved his hand and took the lead in entering the passage while the great desolate army followed him. A few moments later, the view from the other side of the passage came into his view. At this time, John Denver also saw the situation on this side. According to the Planetary Association's information, this was a warrior planet that was on the verge of collapse. The truth was not much different. John Denver saw that the entire land, including the sky, was turning yellow and the energy within this planet had thinned out to the extreme. There was hardly any vegetation in sight above the Earth, and not much life could be felt. The shrinkage of this planet was very severe. John Denver found that the current planet was roughly estimated to be less than 100 kilometers in diameter. Although the planet was on the verge of collapse, many warriors were still alive. The passage opened in a valley on this planet. Chi was very cautious. He didn't relax because there were 10,000 elite soldiers behind him. Instead, he instructed the army to stay inside the valley and dispatch some scouting teams to go out and check the situation outside. This was not a big planet, and beyond the valley, just a few indigenous warriors were wandering around. John Denver also saw these indigenous warriors. There were 3 of them and the aura of each one was very powerful. Even if the most elite warriors of the Great Desolate Army would form a team, no one of them was a match for any of the 3. The suppression of this force value. He could clearly feel the suppression of this force value. On this planet, there is true chi energy, which was also developed to a good height before the owner of the planet died. John Denver recalled the information obtained from the Planetary Association in his mind. The planet's owner has been dead for a long time now. There's no one who is taking care of this planet. The true chi energy on the planet is slowly diminishing. As the true chi energy decreases, the strength of the warriors here will also decrease. If it was in its prime, there were thousands of warriors on this planet. Let alone 10,000 troops, even if it was 100,000. John Denver would not dare to attack at all. But now there couldn't be that much here. He could tell just from the size of the planet, that it was impossible to support a large number of warriors. John Denver saw that the clothes on the three warriors were tattered and there was still hunger on their faces. Apparently, there was not enough food here. The physical quality of warriors was far beyond that of ordinary people, and they can survive by eating just a little food every day. If the planet continues to decline, then these warriors will probably end up starving to death. John Denver thought about it. While observing the situation outside the valley, the vigilance of the warrior was so sharp. While the scouting team was coming out of the valley, 3 pairs of eyes shot sharply at once and spotted the scouting soldiers hiding behind the hill. Seeing these soldiers, the 3 warriors were not surprised. Instead, there was a hint of joy on their face. Immediately after that, the 3 warriors said something to each other. A warrior then turned around and quickly ran back at the speed of a warrior. Their speed was much faster than ordinary people's speed. "Not good, we've been spotted." The scouting team was alarmed. Chi was also following behind the scouting team. After seeing this scene, his face became a little grave, and he said, as expected of an extraordinary person, "The strength is much stronger than our ordinary people. You don't be careless, the first guard at the mouth of the valley. If you encounter something bad, retreat immediately." Chi was a very cautious person, so he immediately ordered the scouting team to retreat. On the other hand, he let other soldiers start constructing simple fortifications. Surprisingly, they planned to take a defensive position. After about an hour, one figure after another appeared in the distance. It was flying this way and it came closer. Everyone just saw that. There were impressively dozens of warriors and their aura was not weak, but each one of them had tattered clothes, even the shoes on their feet were broken. These warriors were seeing the soldiers at the mouth of the valley, one by one. In their eyes, there was a hungry wolf-like oily green light. There were a few of them. They had been hungry for a long time and were treating scouting soldiers like food. The leader was a bald man with a height of nearly 1.9 meters and he was carrying a large knife nearly 2 meters long over his shoulder. The bald man was staring at the scout soldiers. At that time he was scanning back and forth up and down. He said unexpectedly while he was licking his lips, "This time the intruders are actually a group of ordinary people? Ordinary people are also creatures, and their meat may be even more tender." A petite woman next to him laughed and said, "Ordinary people are not better to deal with. If they are warriors like us, maybe we will have to kill a lot more." A man with a face full of flesh humped said, "Just these few ordinary people, I'll kill them like chickens." A long-haired youth said with great disdain, "A total of 58 warriors." While these warriors were speaking, John Denver was watching from a high position. He was watching it clearly that the great desolate army of 10,000 people were against 58 warriors. It was obvious that the warriors of this planet had been invaded. Apparently, as for their previous invasions, they managed to fend them off. Speaking of which, we haven't eaten meat for a long time. The bald man was carrying a 2-meter-long sword and almost drooled. Let alone meat on this planet, even grassroots and barks were all about to be eaten up. These dozens of ordinary people are enough to feed us for a long time. The petite woman said. As the planet was on the verge of collapse, these warriors did not have any morals. For them, living was the most important thing. These warriors had nothing to worry about confronting the ordinary people. All of them went straight ahead, each one used their means and scrambled to the valley. The scouting team hurriedly released arrows, due to the lack of iron ore on Blue Star. Therefore, the main material of the current arrows was copper, and the power was much worse than that of iron arrows. Boom! 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 Dozens of arrows shot over, but they were easily shot down by warriors such as the bald man. "That's it? Ordinary people are really weak." The long-haired youth laughed disdainfully. "Go back to the valley and implement the second plan." Seeing that the arrows didn't give these warriors much threat, Qi's face changed slightly and he ordered immediately. The original first plan was head-to-head battles. It was all about taking advantage of numbers and stacking these warriors to death, but now it didn't work. The scouting team and Qi immediately retreated into the valley. The bald man and other warriors quickly came to the mouth of the valley. There was no stop, they just broke in. After entering, they saw a few hundred people in front of him. The bald man and the others couldn't help but have their eyes lit up. "Ha ha ha ha, there are so many people here." The bald man hadn't finished speaking yet. Suddenly his voice stuck. Then, his face changed. Around the valley, a large number of troops poured out from the cracks, mountain roads, and behind the boulders. Visually, there were at least 5,000 people. Although the bald man and the others were strong, they were not stupid either. Against a few hundred ordinary people, it was not a problem for them. But that number had multiplied tenfold and it was still an organized army. It wouldn't be easy to deal with. Even if it could be defeated in the end, there won't be many of these warriors left. In this narrow valley, the warriors' advantage was further narrowed. "Retreat!" The bald man gave a low shout. The decision was made immediately. Others were greedy though and were drooling, but they also knew the importance of the matter. Immediately, they turned around and retreated. Swish! 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 A large number of arrows shot from the air. Those arrows were coming from all directions, like a rain of arrows. It came overwhelmingly at the entrance to the valley. In just 1 hour, it had been blocked by Qi's orders with boulders. Only a narrow passage was left. When these warriors came in, they didn't even notice this problem. Qi led a team of 1,000 people and blocked the passage to stop these people from retreating. Although these people were warriors, they still couldn't fly. They were surrounded by smooth cliffs and were trying to get out. The only way out was through this passage that held 2 people. But Qi's plan wasn't over yet, and a rain of arrows poured out of the sky, and it was also mixed with a lot of rockets. Inside the valley, a lot of oil had been buried. Once it was ignited by the rocket, it would immediately burn violently, and the 10,000 soldiers who were prepared for this were wearing the improvised smoke masks they carried with them. Thousands of soldiers surrounded the area on the outside as the spear formation. Those arrows were not fatal. The crowd of warriors who were surrounded by the north frantically poured out. Clang! 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 The warriors were all waving their weapons to block the bows and arrows. What they cultivated was true Qi energy. The physical body was not invincible. Once it was hit by an arrow, it was painful. Suddenly intense smoke hit the area, even these warriors couldn't stand it. "Damn it!" The bald man shouted and said, "Come with me and kill them." 58 warriors quickly rushed towards the mouth of the valley. But the 1,000 elite soldiers that Qi had prepared were already prepared there. At the same time, such a small passage could only accommodate 2 warriors to go over. It was even worse, inside the passage, and it was also ambushed with oil. After the bald man and others entered, a rocket was shot over and the passage started burning crazily. Ah! The whole bodies of warriors were set on fire. They couldn't help but scream. If you like our video, please consider subscribe to our channel and like the video. This will motivate us to create more videos. Please give your feedback in the comments. I'll try to reach out and answer every comment.